Okay, this is Izzy. It's hard to see what he's doing. I can't get too close. He's turning his head sideways and sleeping with his head wedged in the bars. The camera's shaking because my arm shakes.
Better?
Yeah, thanks.
You can fake the hand ghost.
Look at him, he's just sitting there staring at me.
I'm a ghost hand in a beer bottle.
Look at him. Doo-doo! What are you doing, Doo-doo? Then don't do that. There's Sky. 7 children drowned at the bottom of the school in Oklahoma City. God bless them.
Tell them the story. No, not the story, that one. You know.
Look at Izzy.
The wig and all.
So all this Oklahoma City stuff is going on and more, and the tornadoes and stuff, and it's really, really heartbreaking. We're in prayer as a family for the people of Moore, first responders, everybody. So Than got really upset about, and I was really upset about what was going on in Oklahoma City, or in Moore. I'm going to move over here so I can be closer to Izzy. So I'll show Izzy as I tell you this story. So Than wanted to hear a funny story to try to offset some of the stuff. So I said, Than, did I ever tell you the story about when my ex-boyfriend Ed took me to a small town in Oklahoma to meet his family? We were going up there. He had to do something for somebody. He was an engineer. And we went up. His parents were divorced and his dad was remarried. And so we went up one weekend. We drove up. And he said, just be forewarned that his mom's a little off. She's going to tell me she's a real estate agent, but really she was a cake decorator at Albertsons, something like that. And so the first place we stopped was at his dad and stepmom's house. And they were sweet and gracious and just lovely people. And we were there we visited for a while. And when we were leaving, the stepmom took me aside and she says, honey, you are about to go to Ed's mom's house. And just be, forewarned that the woman's not right. And I was like, okay. So I'm thinking there must be bad blood between the wife and the ex-wife. And that wasn't it at all. So we go to his mom's house. We go in town. It's a really small town, like maybe 3 streets. So we go to there, and his older brother, and a very pregnant sister-in-law lived there, and then a younger half-brother lived there. The younger half-brother was like 13. And she was divorced. His mother was divorced from the kid's father, the guy was an older gentleman who lived out on a farm away from her. Mom wasn't downstairs. I guess she was upstairs taking a bath. And so we're in the older brother and sister-in-law's bedroom while Ed tries to hook up the stereo to the television because he's an engineer, is trying to figure out stuff for him. So we're having a good time talking to the brother and sister-in-law, and they're so nice, and I was having the best time with them, and then all of a sudden you hear this click, 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 click of little tiny heels coming down the stairs. And as soon as you heard the first click, Ed, his brother, and his sister-in-law all whipped their heads around and looked at me. And I'm like, you guys are scaring the crap out of me. Finally, into the room comes this petite, tiny little lady in a dress. And she's got perfectly coiffed hair, and she's just got a little tummy, a little round tummy, and she's tottering on these heels, and the most angelic cherub face. She's just as sweet looking as she can be. And Ed says, Mom, and she's like, Eddie, I'm so glad to see you. And he says, this is my friend Jennifer. And she said, Phyllis, it's so nice to meet you. And he says, no, Mom, it's Jennifer. And she said, oh, Phyllis, I'm so glad to be here. I didn't correct her. I'm already warned by their attitudes that something's off. So she's talking, asked about how our trip up was because we drove it. and what was going on in his life, and what did I do for a living, and blah, 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 blah. We're talking. Finally, she touches her hair, and she says, "Oh, Eddie, what do you think of my new haircut?" And he looks at her perfectly coiffed hair, and he says, "Oh, Mom, it looks lovely. It's a very nice haircut." And she looked at him and frowned. And she said, as she grabbed the top of her hair, "Not this hair," whips the wig off. "This hair!" She had shaved her head completely bald. The sweet little lady from Oklahoma was completely different at this point. The personality changed. And she goes off as she's ranting and raving about she shaved her head because the government made her do this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. She has gone crazy. Then it was the government's fault, so in protest, she shaved her head. I am horrified at this point, but also it's funnier than hell because it's not my mom, it's Ed's mom, who called me Phyllis. So I turn around, she says, "Oh, I have to go lay down." She totters back up the stairs. I turn around and look at Ed. I said, "I hate you." But I didn't really mean that I hated him. I meant that was the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. We were rolling. It was so funny. He's a little bit embarrassed, but not really, because, he grew up with her. He knew what a nutcase she was. So then he said, he told his brother and sister-in-law, "We're going to go pick up a movie. We'll come back here and get a movie, but we are not staying here. We're going to stay in a hotel because there is no way, no telling what she'd do to Phyllis overnight." Me being Phyllis. So we went, got a movie, came back, we're watching it, and all of a sudden I felt something weird right next to me. I look up, and it's that dang wig right next to me. I scream. I thought it was a rat. So we started tossing the wig across the room at each other during the movie, and everybody's throwing the wig at each other. The mom's upstairs sleeping, and ends up the wig on the ceiling fan just going around and around and around. Next morning, we get up before the mom gets up, and he and I go to visit the ex-stepfather. And he's a sweet elderly guy, lots of money because he owns a lot of land. But his house isn't like that. It's just a real old-fashioned. And he's an old-fashioned gentleman, so sweet. He's like, "Well, so did you meet Ed's mom?" And I said, "Yeah." And he grabbed me by my hand and patted my hand. And he said, "I'm so sorry, honey. She's a bit crazy, but she means well."
Yeah, except
And Ed said, "Well, yeah, she is crazy." He's like, "Y'all didn't stay there, did you?" Ed said, "No, we stayed at the hotel." Because there's only one hotel in the area, so everybody knew what he was talking about. So, we end up going back Ed has to help his brother do one more thing before we leave. But the mom's up at this point, and she's got her wig back on. Somebody must have gotten it off the ceiling fan. And the sister-in-law is very pregnant, heavily pregnant, and the mom...
And you heard the clap, and it's sort of like...
Yeah, we heard the clicking on the stairs again, and it's like you hear Dan do the voice, Yeah, it's like Psycho. You hear the Psycho music as she's clicking down the stairs, and the sister-in-law looks at me, she's like, "Prepare yourself." So I think I've prepared myself, and so the mom comes in the kitchen. "Phyllis, it's so good to see you this morning." And, I was nice and polite. I'm Southern, pretty much, and I'm polite to my elders, even if they are lunatics who shave their head in protest of the government and imaginary stuff. She told me she was working from home that day. She was a real estate agent, and I look over at the sister-in-law, and she mouths "cake decorator at Albertsons," which I already knew that. And then she asked me if I want a drink. Well, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. And she says, "Well, have I ever given you one of my..." And then she met me the night before, but I said, "Have I ever served you one of my Bloody Caesars?" And I said, "Well, I've never heard of a Bloody Caesar. I've heard of Bloody Marys, but never heard of a Bloody Caesar." And she says, "Oh, I use Clamato instead of regular tomato juice." She filled half the glass up with vodka, put some Clamato in it, and it was the strongest drink I've ever had in my entire life. It's one of the reasons I don't drink anymore. And she walked out of the room to go do something. Call a client is what she said, but I think she went upstairs to the bathroom. So the sister-in-law grabs the drink out of my hand and throws it on the grass outside so I don't have to drink all this. Well, the mistake was the mom came clicking back down the stairs as we were getting ready to go back to Texas. And she says, "Oh, you drank that so fast. Let me make you another one." And everybody's like, no, that's enough. We've really got to go. Can't stay." But anyway, that's the story of Ed's mom in the wig. And Izzy this whole time is just watching me tell this story. He's like, "Magic hand, I guess we have to have been there for it to be funny." Anyway, that's it. I've told the story. Dan thinks it's the funniest thing ever. He wants me to tell more stories. I don't want to do that. He doesn't need to know everything. that's it. There's Izzy and Sky, and we're out.